In this lesson, we're working on 4.nf.4a, multiplying a fraction by a whole number. And this is a fairly easy skill for students to learn, but let's just do a little review of how we teach it in the classroom. With this, for example, there's some various ways we can, I usually first introduce the standard by doing visual fraction models. For example, if we're going to multiply the whole number 5 times 1/4, the first thing I tell the students is that just like I can turn any whole number into a decimal by adding a decimal point after the ones digit and a 0 in the tenth, I can also turn any whole number into a fraction, because really I can write any whole number as a fraction by simply putting a little line and a 1 underneath every whole number and make it into a fraction. 5/1 is exactly the same value as just a total 5, because in any way that we make a whole number is by doing numerator divided by denominator. Well, 5 divided by 1 is 5. Just like 10/1, 10 divided by 1 is 10, or 12 divided by 1 is 12. It just makes the visual a little bit easier for students to see when we start learning to multiply numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator. Makes that skill just a little bit easier, but it's not something that kids need to be able to do, but I just want them to realize that I really can write any whole number as a fraction. Just like if I have 5, I can also make it into a decimal by adding a decimal point and a 0. Just to get that little lesson thrown in there. But again, we can do this by doing visual fraction models. So basically what I'm saying with 5 times 1/4, I'm saying 5 groups of 1/4. Okay, so if I want to do 5 groups of 1/4, I can draw 5 models. Okay, and I'm usually a stickler about making these the same size and stacking them up, but it's not such a big deal because we're not using these to compare. We're just using these to make a visual model of 5 times 1/4. Okay, so there's my 5 groups, and each one of these I want to make it 1/4. Okay, so I'm going to go in, I'm going to shade each of these 1/4. Shaded 1/4 of that one, a shaded 1/4, shaded 1/4, shade 1/4, and shade 1/4. So my 5 groups of 1/4, 5 times 1/4. So if I add all of these up, I can see that I've just shaded how many fourths? 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4. So 5 groups of 1/4 equals 5/4. And this, using the visual fraction models, leads us into doing the steps, which is denominator times denominator, numerator times numerator. And so when I do that method, I see that I'm going to get the exact same thing, because 5 times 1 is 5. And if we have the 1 there, 1 times 4 equals 4. So that just leads kids into learning the steps of multiplying fractions, which isn't a skill that we do in 4th grade, but it will help them to get ready for next year when they do. So again, let's just go through one of those together. So if I have 7 times 2/5, okay, and I tell students too that they don't have to leave it as an improper fraction, but we're easing into getting adjusted to those improper to mixed, mixed to improper, and then changing those. So we're kind of taking some baby steps on that. So I tell them they can, as far as when they're doing the multiplication, they can put the 1 or they can leave out the 1, and just know that you keep the same denominator. So basically you're doing numerator times numerator, and you're going to keep the same denominator. It doesn't change. Okay, because if we do this, 7 times 2 is 14, and denominator doesn't change, it stays fifths. Well, then let's change that. Let's change that to a mixed number by doing numerator divided by denominator. Changes us back to a mixed number. So 14 divided by 5 is 2 groups of 5. 5 times 2 is 10. I subtract that out, I get a remainder of 4 that goes in my numerator. So there would be my final answer. 14/5 is equal to 2 4/5. So multiplying Whole numbers times fractions is a skill that students shouldn't overthink, 'cause sometimes that is a problem, is they want to overthink that. But you're simply multiplying whole number times numerator, keep the same denominator, and then finish strong by changing that improper to mixed by doing numerator divided by denominator. And that remainder goes into our numerator of our mixed number. Hopefully this has helped you to see how we do whole numbers times fractions.